Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Hello, everyone. We are here live with PECB. We start now the session. Sorry for being a little late. Jimi Hendrix, I have him here. He was not ready, but now he is, so he will attend as well. So I am here with Dennis, Elvis Omara. Thank you very much for joining in the webinar, and thank you PECB for organizing the webinar. I will present a little bit this first slide as we have a PECB offering some courses and trainings which are very much what we are discussing today. So you can go on the website and you can see what the Certified Lead Operational Resilience Manager has to offer, and the Certified Cyber Threat Analyst. And also there is this information about the Amsterdam conference, which will happen in September online, and in October in person. I think the event is going to be fantastic. So you have a discount code that you can join in. We will go to the next slide. And I will kindly ask Elvis Dennis to present himself.
Thank you, Alex. And hello to all the participants, including those who will be watching us via the recorded session. Right, so I think I would ask the host to run through the poll so that we can gauge what the expectations of the many people out there that are live with us and ready to take part in this complimentary session with ISO 27001, 42001, and GDPR best practices on implementation. So let's just run this poll, and the participants will receive the poll, and that would kind of just give us a small gauge of where we are, or what we ought to emphasize and re-emphasize a little bit more as we go through the session. Now, the topic or the topics that we're going to be covering today is introduction to ISO IEC 27001. We'll also look at the implementation roadmap, which is a step-by-step approach. We'll look at comprehensive risk assessment as part of the implementation process. And then we'll look at the implementation of management systems. And then on the other hand, we'll have the AI Act, which is the 42001, and also the overview of that AI Act and why we need to actually take this session on the emphasis on AI practically as seriously as possible. So let's just have you take those actually select, if they could select more than one, that would be great, but it's okay because I think that the poll has been set up for just one. So make your selections and then we can get the results as quickly as possible. So participants, go ahead, make your choice, please.
All right, and while the participants take the poll, we will also discuss about the 27001 ISO. Dennis will present, then I will move to present the 42001 ISO and the links with GDPR. and then we will take on questions from the audience, and hopefully we can take the questions that we find on the chat. And this is the plan for today.
Thank you, Alex. I'm also trying to look around at the chat box as well. So, right. How are we doing with the poll? Still voting. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so as the votes come in, we can already pretty much see where evenly placed. Let's just say it's evenly placed at the moment. That's for quite good. Taking up on let's check the lead up on. Unfortunately, I can't see one little segment on there. Right, implementation, step-by-step approach, okay, and the AI Act, fantastic. So let's just give it 10 seconds at the moment. 10 seconds would do, and then we will dig right into it. Let's take 10 seconds and we'll dig right into it. As your voting continues, fantastic, fantastic. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well done. All right, cool. Right, so I think we can have the polls in the background at the moment. So let's go straight into it. And next slide, please.
Yes. All right.
Okay, fantastic. Next slide, please. The introduction has been made. Next slide. Right. Back to the agenda, please. Yeah. So within this this session, this webinar session, we will be looking at the introduction to IEC, ISO 27001. We will also try and cover the Annex A, which is the actual practical controls. We'll go straight into the implementation roadmap, and I think that's what the percentage of the many people participating today are looking out for. And we will look at some of the risk assessment approach, because the bulk of the implementation of the ISO 27001 is actually on the risk assessment of risk management. And then finally, I will cover the implementation of management systems, which is all part of the framework. Now, the most important thing for us to consider in this is that because of the interest of time, I will be quickly running through some of these steps. And hopefully with the slides that will be shared with all the participants, you will be able to go back into some of the sessions that we've discussed. And also remember that your participation via the chat and any messages that are coming through that you're sending through to the host will come through to us, and we'll try as best to answer. So we actually expect your participation in this, so to make it very, very interactive. Next slide, please. Right, so by introduction, the question that is always posed out at this present point, as you've already seen, the swift movement in data and how data is almost becoming an existential issue or concern for everyone because of the level of threats and cyber issues that has come across in the last 2 or 3 years, actually following COVID. Now, these threats simply means that with about the highest real risks that companies as well as individuals face, the standard, which is the ISO 27001, is the very, very basic standard, which has covered everything in terms of what the framework actually requires, and for organizations to be audited and certified against. Now, this is a standard that, this is a framework that covers everything from implementation of information systems or information security management systems, all the way to the actual processes within those organizations. Now, within the immediate data that we can share with you at this stage in time is that almost over 12 billion data sets were reported as lost or destroyed or stolen in the last year. And out of that, we're looking at over 61% of organizations at least reported compromise to their data. And that kind of just gives you and me how important it is at this present point in time worldwide or globally, where data and security, or cybersecurity and data security risk, or information security risks stand within that spectrum. Now, within the ISO 27001, we have the main clauses, and these clauses are from clause 4 to 10. And those are the clauses that covers one, context of the organization, leadership, planning, operation, performance, and evaluation. Now, all these clauses are designed in a very structured format, and the format that we're looking at, or that we have employed within the deployment of ISO or any change at all whatsoever, is the PDCA, which is the Plan, Do, Check, Act process. Now, let's move into the next slide, please. Now, this structured the ISO 27001 or the ISO 27000 family of standards, with obviously the ISO 27001 being the principal standard. Now, when we break down how this standard actually falls within the Plan, Do, Check, Act framework, we're looking at simplicity in its core. At the very top, on the planning stage, the clauses that you're going to be looking at are the context of the organization, leadership, and support, because that is where you will start by planning how you will implement this standard, and bring the standard implemented within the organization. And the most important thing at this stage, as you're planning, is that the areas within the standard, or with the clauses within the standard, kind of underpins all the different aspects that you can consider regardless of the size of the organization. And that is where that's why I always term it as simplicity with underlying complexity. So it's simple when you know what you're doing, and it's complex when you do not know what you're doing, or the organization that you're trying to apply this standard to is not well defined. Now, next, please, next slide. Now, let's look at the secondary standard, which is part of the ISO 27001. It's got an annex, but this annex is called ISO 27002. Now, just to give you a bit of an entomology or historical factor to this, now in 2013, that is when the first ISO 27001 was out. Now, 2022, this was updated. The annex was updated to cover, bringing it down from 114 controls to 93 controls. And these controls are actually divided into 4 categories or 4 themes. Now, organizational controls, people controls, physical controls, and technology controls are sort of the themes that we will be looking at, or that you'll be looking at when you are implementing or planning to implement an ISO 27001 within your organization. Now, this is also divided within 14 domains, and actually within these domains, it makes it a lot simpler for you to go through your implementation process, or to go through your planning process before implementation. Now, the first domain is information security. So that looks at all the policies that are required as information security within the organization, and the boundaries of or the scope of those policies that needs to be implemented within the organization, based on the set of the set of what your organization actually does, the size of it, and the type of information that is processed within that organization. Then you've got the organization of information that would have several controls within it. You have the human resource security, which is concerned with the staff, human resources, not just the staff, including hiring of staff, and so on and so forth. So all those controls are included within that. You would also have roles and responsibilities that are accrued within the same set of controls. But one thing to realize or to remember within this within the controls, these control objectives, they call it the control objectives, is that the layers through which it's set up, which you will obviously have to understand, is that it follows a top-down sort of drill down. So at the top are sort of things that every organization may need, and then as you go lower through the controls, you might actually find that some of them do not really apply to the set of organization that you are planning and deploying these set of controls for. Then you've got access controls, or asset management controls. We'll talk about that, and then asset controls, access controls that looks specifically at how people and everyone does have access the information that is within the domains or within your organization. The cryptography is one of those that's been included. Physical and environmental security, that covers all the physical barriers to your organization's locations or domains, or where the information is stored, the physical security to get in or get out, or wherever it is that has to be put in, including cameras, the locking doors and using cards and so on and so forth. All that is covered within the physical environment security. Operations security has got several controls within it. Communications and security, that covers everything within the organization's communications, including communications on webinar, as we're doing at this point in time. But all these controls are right ingrained within there, that you can go in with the right explanations for you to choose or to adopt accordingly and implement accordingly. Now, system acquisition, that as system acquisition, development and maintenance, which kind of covers everything to do with software development within the organization, or signing up to a software as a service, or whatever service that is brought in as a system, acquired in as a system asset, that's covered within that. Then supplier relationship, that is covered to cover all your suppliers and your third-party processes of your data. Information security incident management, that is A16, business continuity compliance. Now, there are others, about 11 controls that were added in 2012 that have not, it's part of the 14 domains, but it's all within the within the 93 controls. Next slide, please. Now, let's now look at how to implement this. Now, for me, I would put this as my blueprint, or we've used this a number of times. Now, the first step in your journey to implementing an ISO 27001 starts with you understanding your environment. You cannot do anything in line with implementing an ISO 27001 within any organization if you do not understand your environment. And that includes understanding it in all the various aspects and factors, including the security requirements and internal and external factors or actors. Now, within this, because of the interest of time, like I said, I'll be rushing through it because we only have a very short period of time before Alex comes in and goes through the other segments of our session today. Now, the next part that you will have to look at is formulating a step-by-step strategy for implementing your ISO 27001. Now, to formulate a step-by-step strategy, it's going to be based on a lot of work that you've done in your planning stage beforehand, because by the time you start to understand your environment, it gets back to the question that I'm often asked by those who've just gotten into the ISO or the implementation sort of environment or format within their profession. to say, okay, what do I do if I've just gotten into an organization and I've got to be the one to actually take part or do or lead on the implementation of ISO 27001? And my answer would say, or would go along this line, that within the first few months, do nothing. Because within the first few months, you're practically trying to understand and know how the organization, what your organization environment looks like, and what sort of threats they are imposed to the vulnerabilities, the type of controls that are already existing, the other different factors that you may have to consider, the regulations, the people that work, the culture of that organization, and so on and so forth. So all this put together will kind of give you an understanding, and it does not take 1 month to understand all this. Now that means that you take time looking at all the different aspects, but you have to do it with a set of with a set of method in mind. Now the next thing is you will then have to scope your definitions. If you could go back to the previous slide. Yes, fantastic. Now scope definition includes you being able to clearly define what areas or what boundaries your ISMS will be applicable to. Now, by defining this, you're looking at all the controls that you've got within the ISO 20002 Annex A and everything in it that actually applies to your organization. And that also gives you the leeway to understand the resources that you will need, including the expertise that you'll obviously have to acquire externally or internally to work through this implementation. Now, with the implementation of ISO 27001, the bulk of the work is actually identifying the risks and is risk management. Let's just put it that way, because with risk management, you're going to identify those risks, assess the risk, and then put those risks in priorities as they are, and then look after you have isolated all these risks according to the different domains that are within the standard, and then tackle it as a top-down sort of approach. The other last point that is absolutely important in terms of your implementation procedures is producing a statement of applicability. Now let's look at this as its own sort of area that kind of puts the button on the implementation process. Now, everything that you're doing has to be within the best practices that has been given, within the framework, the practices that's been given within the ISO 27001, as well as the Annex A, the controls, which means that the first thing is for the organization to buy in to this happening, for you to actually implement, or your organization to implement ISO 27001 as a standard and be audited for it, which means that you'll need to get the buy-in from your top management. So once you've gotten your buy-in from the top management and you have scoped out what is required, you've created a team of people that will work in this project. The next thing is now then for you to start carrying out the different risk assessments that will then also have to be recorded too. Now, once that is done, you will produce a statement of applicability. I don't even know why I always start by doing the risk assessment first before producing a statement of applicability. A statement of applicability is actually a statement of scope and applicability, which means that the scope has to be defined first before you do the statement of applicability. Okay, the question is asked, what is the statement of applicability? A statement of applicability goes back to the first slide that we shared, which is about the simplicity in complexity. The ISO standard is built in such a way that any organization can use it by tailoring the standard to meet their internal requirements. So that means that there are certain controls within the standard that you do not need, that you will not be able to implement. However, if you're not going to implement them, it has to be put onto the statement of applicability to say control A1 or A511126, I'm not implementing A for a reason B. A1 or 7, I'm implementing it because of a reason C, that sort of stuff. So that's what is found within your statement of applicability. It takes roughly a certain amount of time to produce that. The next part, obviously, is to implement your management systems. So once all the controls have been implemented or been done, your next part is to implement the managed systems. Finally, after this has been done, you will go ahead and test your deployments. Now, by testing deployment, we mean that you are not actually doing an audit. Testing a deployment is whether to say that what you have implemented, the control that you've implemented, can actually be used. It has been rightly integrated within the processes and procedures of the organization. And also the controls that are within the organization do have the right responsible persons against them. So that is how you test your deployment. Then finally, you will conduct an internal audit, which then effectively will lead to an external audit. Next slide, please, as I conclude. Right, so I will not go through the risk assessment because of time, but within the risk assessment management, you need to have some sort of a checklist on how you will carry this out as a step-by-step approach. Now, I've listed them all out within the slide that you'll get all this together. So I will not be able to go through all of it because of the interest of time. So next slide, please. Right, so this slide is about you have finally completed your controls. After you've done all the annex controls and you've written all your risk management, you have the checklist for everything. The next thing that you'll need to now do is to have a written information management systems manual, which basically details everything that you've done. It details your organization, maps out what your organization looks like, the leadership and the people that are actually responsible for all the different aspects and areas. You will do what sort of planning that you need, because with security, it's about continuous improvement, because security changes every day. Today, it's a different requirement. Tomorrow is an absolutely different requirement. So you have to constantly and continuously improve as you evaluate and improve. Now, the implementation manual also needs to be produced. Now, this is something that is always oftentimes overlooked by smaller organizations, that you've done the implementation, you've done everything that you had to do, but you have nothing written. You don't have your steps listed out, what you did to get to those sort of aspects, including the experts that you bring in to help out with the processes. That needs to be recorded within your implementation manual. Conduct an internal audit before you do an external audit, and give space between the internal audit and the external audit, roughly about 6 months. So that means that anything that you find that is not right after the results of your internal audit, you can very much go back, rectify, test it over a period of time before you then go ahead and get the external audit completed. Now, the management review is pretty much just about after the external audit or the internal audit is completed, you look at the set of things, including your statement of applicability, to say there are certain areas that have now come to light that we need to have included within this. So we are not going to have them as an exclusion, but then we're going to have them included. Now, my final statement is that as you plan your ISO 27001 implementation process, don't do it yourself, or just don't do it by yourself alone. Make sure you involve everyone that should be involved, including having access to external expertise or experts would be absolutely great. And of course, be sure to understand the in and outs of the standard, including some of the questions that the auditors ask. So there is always an audit book which has all the questions and the answers against every control, which you can pick one for yourselves and be able to go through or run through your implementation process. So thank you so much. Unless there is any questions, I've taken too much time. I would beg to stop here and wait for your questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Very interesting presentation. We will, to be conscious of time, we will move to discussing about the ISO related to artificial intelligence. We are going to discuss about the AI Act, history to present date. We will take some time to discuss about ISO 421, and then we will go through the responsibility of AI system, who has it and whether we can trust it. First, we will discuss the history to present date. So in April 2019, there was this initial proposal by the EU Commission, and there was a lot of focus on ethics, transparency, and accountability. This is what they were focusing about when they started with the initial law. In 2020, the European Commission released a white paper on artificial intelligence to outline policy options. In April 2022, the European Council officially presents Artificial Intelligence Act proposal. In 2022, there was a lot of back and forth between the European Parliament and different EU member representatives. If you can remember France, if you can remember Czech Republic, there was a lot of discussion and debate about the Artificial Intelligence Act, and most likely about the articles in it. And also there was this general approach on AI, which was provided by the European Council, and it was adopted on 5th of December. In 2023, I think this was the year which was very rich when it comes to information. There was 3 versions that were discussed at some point. The G7 countries agreed to an AI code of conduct, and there was this executive order which was adopted by Joe Biden on trustworthy AI. This was something which was released in the US, and of course it was a big event and a lot of discussion following this particular executive order. Also in, let me just put this on mute here, sorry. All right, so in 2024, the AI Act is expected to be signed and finally adopted with phased implementation over the next 2 years. So around June 2026, we should be able to start implementing AI, developing AI under the provisions of the law. So what I want to say here is, if you look at the process, it took 6 years to actually come to an understanding of what the AI regulation should be about. It's a lot of time. GDPR took 4 years. So we are looking not just at more and more legislation that is being drafted, but also we are looking at the complexity of these legislations. There is a lot of, there is very hard for specialists to, and I'm talking about lawyers and technical people as well, to understand these laws in the first 1-2 years after they are being released. So what you saw basically that happened with GDPR, it's also going to happen here with AI. You should look at it as general legislation, and there will be some focus on specific topics that will derive from this regulation. The EU authorities that oversee AI compliance according to the AI Act it's so there are new bodies that will be developed in order to make sure that the compliance with the AI Act is ensured. For example, the EU Artificial Intelligence Board is being outlined by the AI Act, so this is one. The second and the third body that will make sure compliance and understanding of AI Act is ensured within the EU. It's the European Data Protection Board and the European Data Protection Supervisor. And in each member state, there will be an AI regulatory body. Now, there is a lot of discussion about who this body will be, whether it's going to be an authority which already exists, like, for example, the Data Protection Authority. Can they tackle the AI Act? Can they do what is necessary to provide guidelines, to provide consultancy, to enforce the AI Act or not? So in most of the cases, they do not have the necessary resource to cover the entire country when it comes to enforcement of GDPR. So this is the case in most of the countries. So we will have to see who is the actual national body that will be indebted to cover AI. So I was wondering whether this is a race to regulate AI, and you can see here all the countries that are discussing about an AI regulation, and we can see Canada, we can see Japan, we can see Australia, we can see the United States, we can see Brazil here on the map, we can see India, and United Arab Emirates. The thing is that the risk here is fragmentation. You see, all these countries have their version of what AI is, and they will regulate this version. I think this is actually a problem that we have, not just in AI, but also in data protection. But also what we saw is that the European standard served as a global standard. So after the European law was adopted, most of the countries took the same approach. For example, Brazil pretty much copied the GDPR with a few opinions of themselves, but we will have to see whether this will be the case with AI Act as well. I mean, we hope, we expect that it will serve as a global standard. However, do check the other initiatives, the other regulatory initiatives, and I can highlight Japan. This is one of the most interesting ones. Although, let me say something about Japan. I recently returned from Japan after 2 weeks I've spent there, and trust me, look, I was there and I expected to see robots. Instead, I saw a lot of people, not just because they are a huge amount of, they have huge amount of population. There are, especially in Tokyo, but there was enough human resource everywhere, not robots. So this was the thing that struck me in Japan. So they have a very interesting approach on AI. I would advise you to go and check it. So let's look a little bit on ISO 42001. There is this from the beginning, there is this thing that I saw mentioned from using AI technology to societal changes. Now you have to see the ISO 42001, and this is what I find very interesting about it, is that it relies not just on regulatory and governance. I think this is the key for the future. When it comes to AI, the two key topics are governance and ethics. Whatever is in between, it's the way we understand this regulation and the way we and what exactly we want to inform and be transparent about the way we use AI. So I think the challenge is comes from these two concepts, governance and ethics. The framework takes these two very serious, and I think this is why this particular framework is it's one we should take a very close look at. It says here that ISO is a globally recognized standard that provides guidelines for the governance and management of AI technologies. It offers a systematic approach to addressing the challenges associated with AI implementation in a recognized management system framework covering areas such as ethics, accountability, transparency, and data privacy. This is basically, these are the 4 pillars of the ISO 42001. Yeah, I left here a link for you to check. It's directly from the ISO website, so you can see what they have to say and the way they introduce the ISO 42001, and then you can go to check the PECB training, which I think it provides a very good emphasis of the ISO 42001 standard. So the ISO 42001 has these 4 pillars, and I wanted to talk about this more extensive. So the ethical approach integrates other organizational processes to ensure continuous improvement and alignment with other ISO standards, but also ensures coherence with organizational goals and ethical standards, because you see, you cannot develop or use AI without having this ethical baseline. I think all organizations that use AI should think or start to think about drafting an ethics policy on the website and linking this policy to their website next to the privacy policy, terms and conditions, retention policy. By the way, I am very much advocating that you should link the retention policy on your website as well. Privacy. Well, assistance on compliance efforts with privacy laws and safeguarding AI systems against threats. This is another focus of the standard, which it's a very good one, because the Artificial Intelligence Act strictly says that personal data and privacy is not regulated by the Artificial Intelligence Act, but by the GDPR. So whenever we discuss about data, and data is the blood of any AI system, right? You go and you check GDPR. What the GDPR emphasizes, this is what you have to do as well. Security risks. Oh, and I very much advise that you close the topic of security starting with ISO 27001. So this is where I think we link, me and Dennis, we link the ISO with the ISO 42001 with 27001. A systematic approach to identify and mitigate risks throughout the AI lifecycle, provide support on evaluating the consequences and the impact of AI on individuals and society. So you have a broader look because you keep in mind that the ISO focuses on societal changes. So this means that they looked and they took into consideration the potential impact artificial intelligence has. And in 2023, at the beginning, a lot of companies wanted to use ChatGPT. And of course, it was used unofficially. So it was not a CEO decision. Some people from the company started to use it, and they showed to their superiors what they have done, especially in marketing, and all of a sudden someone raised the question, yeah, but what data have you used? You logged in on ChatGPT using our laptop and you created an account using your email. Maybe we should run this through the DPO to see what they have to say, or let's run this through IT. So this is where the company started to ask some very interesting questions. Like, we don't have a regulation right now and we want to use it. Should we regulate it for ourselves? And this is where every company which had a little bit of self-conscious started to design internal regulations, self-regulate. So this is something I very much enforce. Try to self-regulate before understanding what the AI Act wants. And you already have a lot of guidelines when it comes to the way you should regulate this. So the transparency, yeah, it's about how you inform everybody that you use AI. And for this, I come back to something that Dennis was saying, the secure blueprint and understanding your environment. Translating this to AI, this would mean that you very much know why you want to use it. This is what you want to emphasize in your ethics policy and in your transparent information, why you want to use it. And let me say something about ethics. If the AI you are using or developing only serves your company and not the user, it most likely is unethical. Remember this. I mean, think about this. All right. The personal data, when it comes to the way it's being seen by the ISO 271 standard, basically, you see that data is very important. As I said, it's the blood of any AI system. So acquisition of data, quality of data for AI system, data provenance, data preparation, and data used for development and enhancement of AI, it's very important. And this is actually the questions and the assessment which is being done, the risk assessment, which is being done from a GDPR point of view. So this is what we as privacy specialists are looking when it comes to data. Can we trust AI? This is something which I thought about a lot. Well, you trust it if you know AI, and you know it if you build it or if you understand it. So trying to understanding its AI, which is built by someone else, this is the challenge that we all have. So the Annex 4 Technical Documentation Point 2 from the Artificial Intelligence Act requires a detailed description of the elements of the AI system and of the process for its development, and includes all this here. You can find, and you can see cybersecurity maturity is one important focus of the AI Act. And look, I've seen this more and more in the companies. A lot of organizations, they want to get to 100% when it comes to their policies. And I think we should change this perspective. Start with 60, start with 50. Publish your policies, even if what you are trying to self-regulate is not sufficient. Just go with it. Publish it. Don't wait for 100%. Go with 60%. You continue to monitor the way you use it, the way you are handling it, and then if you need to come up with additional information in the internal policies, do it, but don't wait for it to be 100%. And now I want everybody to hear something, to listen to something. You know who this guy is, Sam Altman. This was a very interesting moment in time for him. I think in June 2023, 2 months after this, he was let go. And in my opinion, it's because of this, what he said here. This woman is a very sneaky one. I like her a lot. I like to see what she has to say. Go check on Bloomberg Originals. You can see what she does. So look, let's listen to this and pay very much attention to the way he answers.
Right. Look, I'm so grateful that you've been around the world talking about this. I'm so grateful that you're with us today. I think even you would acknowledge you have an incredible amount of power at this moment in time. Why should we trust you?
Like, I don't, as you know me for a long time, public talking, it's working on it. But at this moment in time, like, people deserve basically as much time asking questions as they want. And I'm trying to show up and do it. But more to that, like, no one person should be trusted here. I don't have super voting shares. Like, I don't want them. The board can fire me. I think that's important. I think the board over time needs to get like democratized to all of humanity. There's many ways that could be implemented. But the reason for our structure and the reason it's so weird, and one of the consequences of that weirdness was me ending up with no equity, is we think this technology, the benefits, the access to it, the governance of it, belongs to humanity as a whole. You should like not, if this really works, it's like quite a powerful technology. You should not trust one company and certainly not one person with it.
So why should we trust OpenAI? Are you saying we shouldn't?
No, I think you should trust OpenAI, but only if OpenAI is doing these sorts of things. Like,
Yeah, so look, the thing is, you want a very simple answer here. Can we trust you? The answer has to be yes. Don't try to be all smart about it. When he said, no, you shouldn't trust me, then he took a pause and he understood, oh, what did I do? What did I say? You want to be very much prepared about this, and this is the way you talk about it is very linked with transparency. So if you have your transparency principles done right, you know what to say. He was caught off guard. I think he should have known more about who this woman is and what she does. She had the same question asked to Sundar Pichai from Google. You can go and search on Google the Sundar Pichai recent interview she took on Google, and she asked the same question: can we trust Google? And you can see that Sundar Pichai had a more different approach. He said a lot of things and nothing. I think this is a very safe approach. I was disappointed by the answer. Still, I'm disappointed in the way this cohort or CEOs approached AI. But yeah, this is what I had to say about responsibility, and I wanted us to take a look at the video. So I want to thank you all. We have available the ISO 42001 training courses, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. Go check it. I'm planning to do so myself after I finish the NIS 2 one, which is another very interesting training of PECB, because we have in October the NIS 2 directive coming in. And so thank you very much. Thank you all.
That was fantastic, Alex. I mean, the general view is just about where exactly are we when it comes to AI, and do we actually understand it? So if we do not know the source, how it's built, then how much of an understanding can we actually draw from it? But I think I've taken one aspect from your slide, which is we shouldn't wait up until we are at 100% to start something, because as we know, it's always ever evolving when it comes to technology, when it comes to the threats, the vulnerabilities out there. So you're better off starting out and then improving, evaluating as you go along. But also don't leave your staff behind. Have these trainings done with your staff as many times as you can. Let them be aware of what is out there. And also every simple question that your staff members could pose, i.e. in terms of the threats of AI, or the threats and compromise of their data, or their concerns about their data, it's always a good idea to keep them as a pile of different concerns and then presenting it to the entire employee group. You know, some of the answers that could have been gathered alongside. So yes, thank you so much, Alex. Now, PECB, they've been absolutely fantastic in setting up this complimentary training session, as well as the webinar. And with the number of people that have joined in, I know that the questions are ready to be asked, so we can take those questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you both, Dennis and Alex, for delivering this highly informative webinar. It was a pleasure. Now, there were a lot of questions from the audience. Unfortunately, we will not have the time to answer all of them, but I will try to handpick some, and the remaining of the questions will be answered afterwards and posted to our social media and also our magazine. First question, I think it's for Dennis. What is the major difference in SOA perspective for ISMS 2013 versus ISMS 2022? Do we need to group the controls, and as well as stratify as preventive, protective control, etc.?
Right. So should we take the next question before we get through? Are you going to ask one by one?
I will ask one by one, and either of you can answer them.
Okay, that's fantastic. Right. So the ISO 27001 2013, the original one, had 114 controls within it. But the updated one has got the Annex A has 93 controls. Now, they've not removed any of the controls. They have simply split some of the controls or merged some of them. Now, the 11 controls have been added covers, I think I can just pull that out to kind of give us a rundown of which I've actually listed it within the slides overview. So you've got elements such as the threat intelligence, which has been added, information security for use of cloud services that was missing, that has also been added, and then the ICT readiness for business continuity, and it goes all the way down to data masking, the masking or pseudonymization, and so on and so forth. So data leakage prevention, I think for some of you that are using Microsoft applications and you know, the Office 365 has got one specific function on data leakage prevention. I'm not too sure if I can mention organizations here, but yes, Microsoft have got that. Then it's got some web filtering controls that is that's also been listed on the new ISO 27001, 27002, 2022, and then secure coding, which also falls directly within the system development and maintenance and acquisition. So in a nutshell, you ought to, in the current setup, you can actually just pick up the ISO 27001, 27002, the 2022 version, and then go through that. Whatever is in the other one is not taken out, but is just updated. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Now, a question for Alex. As of right now, is the EU Act mandatory for organizations offering AI services and solutions in Europe? Alex, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. Can you please repeat the question? Is
the EU Act mandatory for organizations offering AI services and solutions in Europe?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for having it is.
No problem. Another question for Alex. AI versus ethical leadership. Is it ethical?
Just a second. I want to come back to the answer. after the regulation is going to be signed by the President of the European Commission, Parliament, and the Council, because the Council, this was a few days ago, it made the European Council made the news when they validated, that provided the green light for the final version of the AI, and every newspaper and every online paper said, "Wow, the EU enforced the AI Act." No, they did not, because the EU Council doesn't have the power to enforce legislation. The European Parliament does. So with the European and they all have to sign. So now the President of the European Parliament has to sign, and in 2 weeks it's going to be published in the official Gazette of the European Council, and then 2 years from that moment on, the companies have to prepare, and it's becoming mandatory in the EU. So this is my answer. Sorry.
No problem. One last question, because we are already over time. AI versus ethical leadership. Is it ethical for leaders to introduce AI in optimizing processes, knowing that this will increase the chances of creating redundancy for low-level positions?
I will actually want to write down the question. I think it's very complex. I think redundancy is something that I would want to define. What that means, I think it is very important, but I would consider ethics when it comes to sorry, there is this phone again here. Someone doesn't. Okay, so I would consider ethics only in relation to specific data, so that redundancy is excluded. So I think if redundancy is a consequence, then we should be very careful with it. So I think you should get your experts, lawyers, technical people in it to really take a look at the data, and this should be done before you actually implement or put on the market, because if you put on the market, you take responsibility for it. So this is not the case if you use low risk AI. But if you, and we don't know from the question what type of AI they are working on. So if you have low risk AI, then you should pretty much flow under the radar of the regulation. If you have risk-based AI, then you fully take all the load of the AI regulation on you.
Thank you, Alex.
Add something?
Yes, quickly. We have one last question that we need to ask, and then we need to finish this up. But yeah, quickly.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, very quickly on that question, just to add that, as far as the business leaders are concerned, I think they have a responsibility to have a much risk-based approach in the implementation of any form of technology that comes in, and the base of the risk should also reach as far as how it will impact the headcount, the employees' productivity, whether it's going to lead to redundancy or laying off those employees as well. That needs to be effectively taken up as a responsibility by the business leaders. That's a small part I wanted to add on there.
Thank you, Dennis. Now, one last question before we finish this off. To what extent does ISO IEC 42001 help with compliance with the EU Act, AI Act, and how much overlap is there between the two?
Yes, I think the ISO pretty much follows the regulation provisions. So I think if you ensure a compliance based on the ISO standard, you pretty much have ensure compliance with the regulation. However, there are a lot of question marks still that derive from the regulation, and in the next 1 month, or in the next year after the regulation is being adopted, there are going to be some guidelines which are published. So the European Parliament emphasized that these guidelines should clarify a lot of questions following the AI, but the standards provide a very good baseline. The ISO is really the most complete one. You also have NIST, and the European Council already provided some insights on ethics, and also the UN provided some insights on ethics of AI. So all these regulations and all these standards should be followed. But in my opinion, I would recommend the ISO 2040-2001 because I think it's the most complete.
Dennis, if you have to add anything?
Nothing to add for the interest of time, but the answer that Alex gave was quite comprehensive in that regard.
Thank you once again, both Dennis and Alex, for this amazing webinar. To the audience, please be informed that the remaining of the questions will be passed to the panelists afterwards and will be published online, and as well as on our magazine. Also, please be informed that this session is recorded, and we will post it on our social media and on our website and YouTube channel, along with the slides of this amazing presentation that both the gentlemen have presented. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.